Tina, I just must say, that would be a really, I feel like if I was a flight attendant, that would be what you always were praying never happened, you know? And it did. So the way Tina describes it, she was just doing her job when the man opened the briefcase to show her a row of what had looked like sticks of dynamite hooked up to a battery. She thought that she'd be sick, stating she can remember looking at the seat pocket in front of her and staring at the barf bag. But instead of reaching for it, she had began to pray. Prayed for herself, for the passengers, looking back at everyone, especially with the holiday the next day. It was definitely a very intense moment for her, and I'm sure the rest of the flight crew as well. And at this point, she was only 22 years old. And she said that as she prayed, she basically prepared for her imminent death. So the flight to Seattle had only taken about 30 minutes, but air traffic control had kept them circling the airport in a pattern over Puget Sound for nearly 2 hours, while government agents on the ground had scrambled supplies to meet this mysterious man's demands. Lightning had flashed outside the windows. Tina says she'd later learned that they were holding a pattern over the water to keep it so that if this man did set off these explosives, that the plane and the people inside it were then kept from raining down on the people below. So they just stayed over the water to keep others safe, which is insane for the pilots to even think of that, but so smart as well. So co-pilot Bill Radaksak told passengers that they needed to burn fuel because of a minor mechanical problem, trying to calm them, not create any panic. Realistically, he probably didn't. He probably just annoyed them. That's probably a weird thing to say. And especially because this would be terrifying. This would be terrifying. But I'm just imagining if it's me and this pilot's like, oh, we're just doing this. I'm like, okay, we're all gonna die because a wing is gonna fall off or something. Or I'm like, come on, guy. It's right there. Just land. Like, anyway, these pilots were amazing. I'm just sorry. So, when the plane had finally landed and passengers had gotten off, they were still all unaware of what had actually happened. Tina, at the hijacker's instruction, had made several trips off and onto the plane to carry the government-provided money and parachutes on board. Meanwhile, the other 2 flight attendants had escaped and the plane was refueled. So the hijacker had insisted that Mexico City was the destination that they were now headed to. And so the 727 had taken off again, bound for a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. And Tina was the only person in the cabin with the man in this suit and dark a dress shoes, a suit. It's just very bizarre. And yet a massive search went out after this, and he was never found, which is crazy. But oddly enough, the money, some of it, was found. In 1980, a child had dug up a few stacks of rotting 20s on the bank of the Columbia River near Portland, over the Washington state line, that were traced back to the hijacking. Literal buried treasure stuff that you as a kid are like, what if that happens? It happened to this child? Like, that is a dream for any child. But the lead fizzled out. The FBI published the bills, the serial numbers, but the vast majority of cash was never found. The D.B. Cooper hijacking, as it became well known, was still a mystery. And it was known as this because the man had bought a plane ticket under the alias of Dan Cooper. And it has still made detectives and, law enforcement haunted for decades. In 2016, the FBI officially had closed it, and to this day, it is the only unsolved plane hijacking in history. And they have no clue who this man was. To some, on that day, on the 7/27, Tina really was the hero of the ordeal. She endured a lot of stress. She was this hijacker's main point of contact, and yet she was so calm and collected. And she had helped ease him and the people that she'd worked with throughout the whole thing. But that also had negative effects, from what some people thought at least. They thought maybe she knew who it was. Maybe she was somehow involved. She was seen as this key to the mystery by some. People would try and talk to her on the streets. She didn't like to talk about it for a long time. And since the 70s, enthusiasts have reached out to her for any answers, really. Some think of her as the savior, others the answer to the burning questions. And after all, she did spend more time with him than anyone else out there. And her hesitancy to speak about it publicly really fueled a lot of the conspiracy theories behind this. But despite all of this, says her decision not to talk about it wasn't a cover-up for some deeper mystery. She's not in witness protection. She's not suffering from PTSD. She cooperated with the FBI after everything that had happened, but just